All right, I got the thumbs up. We're like a couple minutes early. It's only 1 minute after, but we'll go ahead and get started.
I love your math.
So we're going to be in 1 Kings 14 through 16. Obviously, we can't cover all of that in detail. I don't think the author intended us for us to cover it in detail because it is a summary by nature. So we're going to try and fly by and maybe have a, 10 or 20,000 foot view of what's happening here and hopefully get the message the author intended. Real quick, we kind of rushed through chapter 13. It's a very strange story. I didn't know if you wanted to recap any of that or if reading it through it, if you read through it again or not. But anything that stood out to you from chapter 13 that we didn't quite cover.
I didn't really talk about it too much, but how about Jeroboam?
Yeah.
Didn't really change his ways whatsoever.
Right, yeah.
And that was kind of a key that I think is why you had stated that he's kind of going to be the person that they're going to look back to.
Yeah.
Time and time again. Look at how he did things.
The gold standard of rebellion against God, right? Yeah, and it is interesting, verse 33, the chapter, that story concludes with, even after this, Jeroboam did not change his evil ways. So, that's a little bit of a hint that this story was a message for Jeroboam that he didn't get, right? So, there's something in that about Jeroboam, but what do you think? Any other ideas? We're recapping chapter 13.
So I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
It's out of town. What was the consensus just on, just open discussion? How did people feel reading through this account and going, well, he got struck dead because he was lied to?
Right.
Because right from just quick glance, you go, wow, that seems wildly unfair.
Right.
It's like, oh, how many times do you say, no, I can't, and then somebody says, oh, well, I'm a prophet too, and God
the Lord told me
this. Oh, okay, well, must be all right, this guy's a prophet, right?
Right.
So we'd have to peel some layers back.
Yes.
Probably, because at the glance of that, to me anyway, my first thought is like, man, that's how it all goes, right? That's how it all ends for you. You try to do the right thing, and then you get lied to, and then you're punished for it.
Right. Yeah.
So there's got to be something to the layers.
Right. Yeah.
Beneath that. So.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the concepts there in verse 33 that you were reading, the last part of that says, but again, in other words, he continued making priests from every class in the high places. So he put these people in place around him, and he started listening to them rather than from the actual prophets of God.
Well, and to that point, they're not necessarily maybe the most honest people to begin with. And if he already had the message from God, wouldn't you think that God would come back to him
Yes, that's my thought
to,
too.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
you've got someone who has a track record of long ago might have been walking in the upright ways, but seems like has long since established a pattern of not walking in the upright ways, just like Jeroboam and his whole reign, right? I mean, they just get further and further and everybody attached to that. So you kind of go, yeah, I don't know how credible this prophet was at
Right.
this stage of his life anyway, for you to just follow them on such a, when there was such a direct command from God for you to just go, oh, well, this guy of shady repute told me God said this, maybe I should verify that, right? Or
Yep,
you might ask a question or two.
yep, good.
That's exactly what happens in Genesis in the first sin. Eve knows what the command is, she's gotten it from God, and then Satan comes in and says, did God really say that? And he plants that seed, and she's like, oh, maybe not. And so she takes the fruit, and this is every one of our daily lives, walking in the wilderness. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like, we know what God says, and then we're like, but is that what he really means?
Right, yeah. There's a still small voice from the Lord guiding us, telling us what to do. And there's a still small voice from the enemy saying, can you trust that guy? Can you really trust him? Did he really say that? Do you think he's going to follow through with that? Right? So there's...
So how well do we know God?
Right, yes.
And how well do we know?
Yeah, and verse 16, when that old prophet says, come eat with me, the man of God said, I cannot turn back and go with you, nor can I eat bread and drink water with you in this place. I've been told by the word of the Lord, you must not eat bread or drink water there or return by the way you came, right? So, I think at the very least there's a lesson that you've got to do what the Lord first told you to do and not listen to anybody else, right? And I mean, that's a principle we live by today. Like, we're not going to go off of some newfangled idea that says, hey, actually, you should probably interpret everything this way and lead us down a path. We need to go into that with skepticism and go and measure it against the standard of the word of the Lord, right? Right?
But then we see that happening all the time.
Right.
Without realizing it, that people are doing their own interpretation of stuff. And we are not taking the time and the effort to compare what really the Word of God does say. It just gets into our mind and that causes some doubts on our end. And
Yes.
it's a dangerous place for us to be in. We have to really guard against that.
Yes, yeah. We can't just read the headlines and think we know. How often do you read a headline and then you read the article and you go, the article actually is the opposite of what the headline says,
All you in.
right? What in the world just happened here, right? So we can't just read the headlines. There's a very popular headline that says roles for women in the church. Were actually, when it says women should not speak in the assembly, you listen. You got to interpret it through this lens. What's the Artemis of the Ephesians, right? Is that where you?
It was like hermeneutics.
Yeah, hermeneutics, yeah. And Artemis of the Ephesians, right? This goddess, there was a temple there, and these women were trying to domineer over men. And so there's a headline. You should interpret it that way. But then you start to dive in, and I've listened to about 15 hours of analysis on that claim, looking at every claim in that, and it's like, that's totally, that is misconstruing all of the details. That is a headline. When you look at all of the footnotes, all of the citations, it's like, it's not there. It is not at all there. People want it to be there because they want to do what they want to do, right? So, yeah.
the beauty today is we have the written word.
Yeah.
We don't have to depend on, well, what did Brad say about this?
Mhm.
What did Sam say about this? What did Tom say about this? We don't have to depend on that. We have the written word. We can read it for ourselves. We can understand it if we try.
Yep. Good. One other thing, and we need to move on because we can't cover everything today, but you see here, even you see the devolving of the culture and of the faith. Because even the prophets now are lying and saying they're from God. So we're going to see this continue to completely spiral out of control. But you kind of get a hint here that the king is going to be led astray. Everybody's just gone off the deep end, or going off the deep end. So,
Well, something to keep in mind for us is like the phrase "trust but verify."
yeah.
Comes to my mind, right? Because we know angels themselves have free will and have turned to worship and follow Satan, right? So
Right.
it's just kind of like, it's not out of line to think that a prophet or somebody human that also has that same free will could maybe have things misconstrued, right? So
Yep.
it's kind of like trust but verify. Go back to the source, because any of us can be misled.
Yep, very good. Yeah, so then if we apply this to Jeroboam, Jeroboam was told, I'm going to give the kingdom to you. And God took the kingdom away from Solomon and gave it to Jeroboam. But then Jeroboam takes that authority and runs away with it and says, oh, okay, so I have to do more than what God gave me. I've got to keep these people here. So I'm going to set up, like, hey guys, how do we keep it from going back to Jerusalem to worship? Because they might go there and stay there and be enthralled. How do we do that? And he takes God's prophecy and he misconstrues it. He leads it completely into sin by setting up these golden calves and saying, these are the gods that brought you out of Egypt. Just complete heresy, all in an attempt to secure what God gave him, right? Secure the northern kingdom. So
To build on that one step further, what I was curious in looking at this whole study, he was more afraid of Solomon than he has been of God.
yeah,
It just struck me as going through it. It's like, man, that's construed the wrong way by far.
Well, I was gonna say, I think it's interesting too, I'm gonna remind myself, when he gets the same warning that all the other kings do, if you follow my statutes, things will go well for you, and it's the same thing, right? Same warning, and then I'll fall back on relying on my own.
yeah, good, yeah.
I think it's easier for us to disregard God in that sense because we don't see the immediate consequence, perhaps, as if something was against Solomon and you could just bring the army right down or whatever and put the hurting on us, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like we see the immediate consequences in front of us in the earthly sense, and we can get so focused on that we've lost this big picture of what happens, because when you look at a Jeroboam, it wasn't he had one misstep and God punished him eternally for it. It was like, okay, I've told you what you need to know, you keep getting farther, you keep getting farther, you keep.
Yep.
So it's like, at a point it comes that we're just reaping what we've sowed.
Right.
Not, oh, God's being unfair to us, or what. It's like, I told you everything you needed to know, and you just disobeyed it, right? And it's like those consequences that you put out of your mind, time to pay the piper now.
Yep. Good. So,
Brett, I have to say one more thing.
Okay.
On 13, I'm really sorry, but I think it's noteworthy that this lion kills the man but doesn't eat him, or the donkey.
Right.
And so we see an animal that's not acting like causes to pause.
Right. Yeah, this animal did not kill out of hunger. It killed out of the will of God, right? Like this, there's something driving this action that's not natural. It's supernatural, and it is a judgment from God, not just an accidental
And it's
mauling.
almost like it's sitting there peacefully,
Mhm.
almost like we think of the lion as like a kingly type animal.
Yes.
It's interesting that.
Yes. Yeah. C.S. Lewis said, Aslan is not a tame lion, right? So, you know, back to Cole's, like, this seems pretty harsh. Yeah, God's not gentle. And we can't forget that. God is not a tame lion that will do our bidding. It's his will, and we have to conform to him.
So on the positive side of that, you look at how many times he says, but because of my servant David,
Yeah,
I'm not going to blah, 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 right? So it's like, he's our biggest cheerleader, but if we choose to go away from that, he'll be the ultimate punisher of the consequences of what we've sowed, right?
yes,
And so that's a great thing to also see the long suffering that he has. I don't wish that any should perish, right? But that all should come to repentance. We also see that God, but you can't only focus on that side of him and forget the other side of the coin.
yep, very good. Yeah, so we're about to see more of God's judgment here in chapter 14. So Jeroboam didn't change his ways. So what is the next bit of judgment that God issues?
His son gets sick, so Jeroboam says, hey, go to Ahijah. I remember the prophet, he's a prophet of God. Go to him and see what's going to happen. And then God tells Ahijah to tell his wife, like, your son's going to pass as soon as you get back. And because you fell away from the Lord, the ways of the Lord, your whole house is going to fall.
Mm-hmm. Good. Why this? Why striking his son? Is there anything significant about that? Why not just kill Jeroboam?
Probably symbolism that your line is going to pass, right?
Yeah, the symbolism, right? Because your son is heir. And to let you know, I'm on the warpath against your dynasty. I'm going to take your son, right? Good. So why do you think Jeroboam told his wife to go to Ahijah secretly? Jen?
I mean, I think he knew what his reputation is, you know? I'm sure he was like, hey, so just ask him for a friend.
Right.
And of course, the Lord just warned him ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good.
I think ultimately it shows his heart.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we keep on kind of dancing around it a little bit, not trying to stay away from it, just,
Yeah.
but like this whole thing is, his heart is not following God. So in many of his, if not all of his actions, you're going to see that his heart doesn't follow God. He doesn't trust him, he's deceitful, he's doing things to his gain in a way that he can see to an end, not that he can put himself, you know, at the mercy of God and accept whatever comes his way. He wants to control the situation.
Yep. Good. Yeah, Don?
Well, and he has no relationship with his God to ask him directly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, he knows that he has rebelled, right? And clearly God gave him a message in chapter 13. You rebelled, and I gave you the kingdom, and then you took it and distorted it, right? And he still didn't repent. So you see where his heart is. You see that he doesn't really love the Lord and want to do his bidding. Has more self-ambition. Yeah.
I do love the fact that they tried to disguise who she is, and God's like, not in my house.
Right. Yep.
I heard
Yeah.
your feet. I know who you are.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure there's symbology too to the prophet Ahijah being blind, right? Like You think you can go disguise yourself to a blind guy? Why are you disguising yourself for a blind guy? But even that doesn't get you, God still sees, right?
So have we lied to ourselves thinking we fooled God before?
Oh my, yeah,
You know?
yeah,
That's the lie we tell ourselves. Oh, you know, I can come in prayer and try and hide the dirt that's there.
yeah,
Oh, wait a minute, God, I forgot. You're omniscient, you're all knowing, you're all powerful. You see right through
yeah,
this scheme of mine.
right. Yep, very good.
Well, and the reason you dress up to a blind person, because the blind person is gonna ask those people that he trusts, who was this person that came to me? And if they don't know, so it's this big web of
Yep.
containing a secret and thinking big picture of how do I make all this go the way I want it to.
Right, yep, good, yeah. So, anything else about kind of that story?
Well, it's not gonna go his way because he hasn't changed his heart. It goes back to what,
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly, yep,
and I couldn't help but think of Jacob and Esau and, you know, their parents and
Mhm.
that situation of trying to trick, same
Right.
sort of scenario, but different
trick a
outcome.
blind guy, yep.
Different outcome, right? So I just
Yeah.
found it quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
It also made me think of Saul when he goes to the witch of Endor.
yeah,
And deception is the weapon of the weak. And
Ah.
so at the point that they start to feel weak, then they have to turn to this deception to figure out what's going on here.
yes, yeah,
And at that point, they lost.
yeah.
It's done.
Deception is a weapon of the weak, yeah,
And what the prophet tells her must have crushed her, because the moment you get into the city, your son is gonna die.
Yeah.
You don't even get to get back to him. So all of this is now just crushing. I couldn't even imagine.
yeah,
You're going for hope. You're disguised and you're going for hope in this plan. And then you're told you won't even get to comfort your son as he dies.
right.
It's the moment you step into the city, you'll hear.
So do you rush back or do you delay, right?
Exactly.
Wow,
I'll be back.
yeah, oh man. Either way, you're never gonna see your son alive again.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, one thing that's interesting, so we're squarely into the divided kingdom. And, I feel like I spent most of my life kind of just having this idea of the united and divided kingdom. What would you say was the issue that caused the divided kingdom? And this really isn't in the text, I mean, it is in the text, it's not in this text. I mean, why did Jeroboam rebel? Because,
Rehoboam wouldn't give mercy to.
right, so they were overtaxed, right? They had a heavy burden of tax, and they were like, look, this is too much. We can't do this. We can't have this opulent king, again, Deuteronomy 17. You were warned, right? So this crushing oppression of taxation, so that you could have this opulent king that people travel from all over the world to see, actually not a great thing for the people, right? So, so yeah, here we are, and now it's going to get kind of tricky, because going forward, we're going to have in this year of the reign of this guy in the northern kingdom, here's who was king in the south. And in this reign, when he was king in the south, this guy became king in the north. So you have to really pay attention to your Israel versus Judah, because from now on, you're going to be like, wait, Baasha is which one? Oh, yeah, right? So, you gotta really, really pay attention. So then we switch back over to the king of Judah, Rehoboam. Let's pick up there. How would you summarize what the text says here about Rehoboam's rule? Yeah, Jen?
Just evil and idolatry.
Yeah, evil and idolatrous, right? Good.
Did according to the abominations of the nations around it.
Right. They said, we want a king like the nations around us, and they got one, and now they are like the nations around them. Good.
What stands out to me is verse 22.
Yep.
And Judah did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and they provoked him in jealousy with their sins, that they committed more than all that their fathers had done. So it's like, it's trying to like paint a picture, like this isn't, you can't compare this to what happened in the past. This is as bad as it had gotten to this point, right?
Right. Good. Yep.
Egypt comes in and takes back a lot of their gold.
Right. Yep.
It's kind of what
Yeah.
started, gave the people the tabernacle, and then
Right. Good. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how many times eye for an eye, right? The lex talionis, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. God does that. So they left Egypt. God blessed them with all the gold, and they said, "Here, take." The Egyptians said, "Here, take the gold." Now they're coming back. God says, "Oh, I'm gonna return this." Right?
It just goes to show those alliances aren't gonna stay
Yes.
if you're not going to stay true.
Right. Yeah.
There's just a common goal with that alliance, and if
Yeah.
somebody goes against it, then you typically reap the rejection of that.
Right? Because this would have been his father's wife one of his wives was from Egypt, and he married her for an alliance. How's that working for you? Not very well now, right? Good. So again, you see the worldly endeavors spin up, and now God's going to tear them all down, right? So look for that pattern of deconstruction, decreation, right? The reversal of all of that.
Brad,
Yes.
a thought, go back on you, sorry.
No, you're good.
Back in verse 15 and 16,
Mhm.
when it talks about, he says in 16, he says, he will give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam,
Mm-hmm.
who sinned, the key phrase here is, and who made Israel sin.
Yep.
Now, what does that make you think of application for us today? You look at James 3:1, let not many of you become teachers.
Right.
Why? Because there's a stricter judgment coming.
Right. Yep.
And then you could also look at the reciprocal of that when it talks about 1 Timothy 5:17, when Paul tells Timothy, elders are worthy of double honor. Well, they also can be worthy of
Double destruction.
destruction.
Yeah.
So when you become a leader, when you become someone who's going to teach and lead people, you better make sure that you're grounded in the scripture
Yeah. Yeah.
and grounded in the way the Lord wants you to go.
Yeah. Right. Good. Yep. Excellent. So anything else from Rehoboam, king of Judah?
Well, it's the same way. I mean,
Yeah.
Rehoboam, we read it already, is that Judah did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Directly related to Rehoboam, right? So
Yep.
those leadership qualities are gonna trickle down.
Yeah. Did you notice there at the very end, the last verse says, and Rehoboam rested with his ancestors and was buried with them in the city of David. His mother's name was Naamah. She was an Ammonite, and Abijah his son succeeded him as king. Now, What should jump out at us there? Only one right answer here.
The commentators think that this verse names his mother specifically.
Yes.
Why would the writer do that?
Yes.
And the conclusion is probably she's the one who influenced him in all this idolatry stuff.
Yeah, because she was an
Ammonite.
Ammonite, right?
He had his own flaws to start with.
Sure.
Added to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way things work. You don't have a pure, perfect son who was not influenced by a woman who was from the nations around them, who God said, don't marry these people. They will lead your heart astray. They will lead the nation astray into idolatry. And so here, by the way, she was an Ammonite, so no surprise here, right? Don?
I think it's kind of interesting too, that we know the temple was filled with all this gold and
Yes,
riches and everything like that, and obviously was open for everybody and everything, but after all this was stolen, he replaced it with bronze.
right?
Which was nothing, and it was only brought out whenever he came in and worshiped,
Yes.
and then it was taken back to the storehouse.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, we didn't talk about this, but they made all of these shields out of gold. Worst metal ever to make a shield out of. Like, you don't see anybody with golden axes, because one hit and the gold's soft, right? You don't have a shield made of gold. Number one, you're lugging it around. You can't hardly carry it because it's so heavy, and it's so soft. It will get bent. Like, that's just the only reason you would have a gold shield is because you want to decorate with it, right? So here's an instrument of war that we're going to make a decorative instrument of war. Like, why would you do that? Again, it's just, even in the details, you see the worldliness and opulence that God said you don't need. You just need me. I will take care of all of these things. Don't amass for yourselves all that gold. Yeah, Cole?
I just wanted to kind of maybe bring this to us today a little bit, because we're getting ready to see when Asa becomes king of Judah. I believe there's six or seven kings of Israel that come and go within his reign. And so this, we see how all those came about. It wasn't good. And so I'm just thinking too of like the generational impact that happens when we make poor choices and how that affects our children's lives. If we're not impressing upon them the importance of the gospel, where are they going to get that importance? Are they likely to be people who seek God throughout their lives?
Right.
And if not, the chances are less likely that they come to that on their own, and that's even less likely that their children seek God.
Right.
And that's even less likely that so it's like these generational cycles are extremely difficult to break, because you're in an environment where no one is standing up for God in those circles, right? And so I think for me that also just goes to us understanding not everybody was just raised in the church and it just should make sense because it says it right here, right?
Right.
That's not the reality for a lot of people. And so that's just maybe a moment for us to realize and remember the grace that we need to have with others that might not have come from a background that we did, or might be fighting generations of, being outside of a mindset of having God in their lives.
Yes.
So we can see the long-lasting impact of how that can affect the generations to come.
Yeah, the Shema, which is his name, or listen rather, the Shema in Exodus 34, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands or 1,000 generations, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation, right? So there is a lasting impact on that. But the three to four generations are impacted by evil. God's abounding love and faithfulness impacts thousands of generations. So there is hope behind all of that. Comparatively, God is loving and gracious. Dawson?
So another application I think we need to make that to ourselves today is we can listen to those people around us because they have scientific knowledge, they have whatever. They have higher education than I have. And we start putting stock in what they say versus and taking it over what the scriptures say. It's going to be the downfall of us, dramatic downfall.
Right. Yeah.
Just as it was for these men.
Yep.
As we see throughout time. So when we put stock in our teachers, we put stock in our bosses, we put stock in whatever, whoever it is, that's going to be our downfall. We will not make it to heaven.
They will let us down. Yeah,
That's right.
for sure. Jen, you had a comment earlier.
I was just needing a refresher on the Ammonites, and I missed a couple classes, so you may have already talked about this, but they were such an evil people. Back in 1 Kings 11, it talks about Solomon building a site for Moloch, who was, one way of serving them was serving children.
Yeah.
And in Zephaniah, God compares them to Gomorrah, the Ammonites. And so
Yeah.
it's just like as evil as you can imagine. It wasn't just like not reading the law.
Right.
It was so evil.
Right.
So that was his mom.
Yeah. So that's why it's mentioned, right? Like his mom was an Ammonite, and you probably shouldn't expect much else, right? Okay. That's Rehoboam, and then we kind of start this spiral. Chapter 15. In the 18th year of the reign of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, so Jeroboam's in Israel. The way I remember that is Jeroboam starts with a J, is not king of Judah, which starts with a J. You don't want to combine your J's. Okay? So I still think every time I read Jeroboam and Rehoboam, I go, J, Judah. Okay, he's Israel. Okay. So if that works for you, then God has blessed me with that mnemonic device. So Jeroboam in the north over Israel. His son Abijah becomes king of Judah. What is the summary of his reign?
War is part of it between him and Jeroboam.
Right. So now there's a civil
Similar
war.
to Rehoboam and Jeroboam, so not like the way it was with Solomon.
Right. Yeah. Good. Yep.
The same sins as his father, and then we get a reminder of the promise to David.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yep. Jen?
The wording right after what Micah said, his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord. In 2 Chronicles, it talks about how he did have a moment of faith, and that is what saved, I think they slaughtered 500,000, and that was because they trusted the Lord. So like, he had some faith, according to 2 Chronicles.
Yes.
But not fully devoted.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah. Good. Yep. Verse 2 said he reigned in Jerusalem 3 years. So one sign of a bad king is how long he reigns, right? So keep that in mind as we go through this. And then right after that, what does it say? After he reigned 3 years, his mother. So we know the queen mother. I want you to pay attention to how many times we know who the queen mother is, right? And what is the noting factor of her?
She was Rehoboam's favorite wife.
Okay,
And we find that out in Chronicles as well.
okay. What else? Do you guys have Maacah, the daughter of Absalom? Your translation might say Abishalom, which is just a different variation. So, what do we know about Absalom? Why would you want to mention who she came from?
David's line.
David's line. Good guy?
He's very handsome.
Why do you have to remember that? What was noteworthy about Absalom?
He tried to take the throne.
Tried to take the throne from his father, right? Led a rebellion. David had to leave the capital city because Absalom was trying to kill his father, right? So, again, a little bit of relevance to that. There was war between Abijah and Jeroboam. So, civil war. There's civil war going on. Their brothers are killing brothers. These people they're all Abraham's descendants. They're all Israelites. They should be in harmony serving God, but they are at war with one another. Okay? In the 20th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, so there's a marker. So Jeroboam's king of Israel. Asa became king of Judah. So, and he reigned in Jerusalem 41 years. And then, does it say whose mother's name was? No, his grandmother. Maacah, daughter of Absalom, right? What did you take from that? From Asa's reign? What's the summary of Asa's reign?
He got rid of tons of what had been previous of the gods and everything but the high places, basically.
Yeah, good. Yep. Hey, that's 3 minutes early, isn't it? Come on. Okay, so we'll quickly run through that and then cover the next couple chapters on Wednesday.